Three's the Charm by MissCHSparkles. Chapter 27. Harry stood in the doorway of the girls' bathroom on the second floor, watching shadows dance across the surfaces of the room. He had just gotten back from Hogsmeade, after using the secret tunnel that took him all the way to Honeydukes. Thankfully, the villagers didn't seem all that bothered if students turned up to buy things. It seemed to be some sort of tradition. It seemed to be some sort of old, unofficial tradition. At least Fred and George never seemed to have any problem sneaking into the village and buying supplies for parties. But Harry hadn't gone into Hogsmeade for sweets and butterbeers. He had gone to receive a package from the post office containing the hard-to-get potion ingredients. Knowing how long it took to reach Hogsmeade, he had set off at 4 a.m, and by the time he had returned, it was almost 7. To give himself energy, he drank a butterbeer he'd bought the last time he'd gone to the local village. He had shared the butterbeers with his friends. Ron had gulped his down with gusto, while Hermione had enjoyed half of it before allowing Ron to have the rest of it. Of course, it had made the redhead a bit tipsy, since his 11-year-old body wasn't used to the stuff, but Harry almost thought the effect was closer to a caffeine rush than an alcoholic overdose. Anyway, he ended up getting told off in a couple of classes for not concentrating or messing around, almost earning detention. Harry felt a little lightheaded with tiredness and the sugar rush, but he ignored it as he stared at the hidden entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. He had only visited it once, when he'd gone to rescue Ginny, and had never felt any need to go back. But that had been in his previous life. Now it felt like something was whispering, calling to him. It didn't matter that there was a slumbering basilisk deep within the chamber. He almost ached with an incredible urge to enter. There was a loud creak, and he glanced towards the door, listening for any sign of Filch or Mrs. Norris. He didn't detect anything. This part of the castle was still deathly quiet. With a tired sigh, he checked the map, making sure no one was heading in his direction. Seeing the way was clear, he gave the collection of taps and sinks one last glance before heading out of the bathroom. Just as well it was a weekend. He'd need to sleep in today. Soon it would be the Christmas break, and he'd be reunited with Sirius at long last. If he could just ignore the allure of the chamber a little longer, everything would be fine. Sirius paced the sitting room every now and then, glancing at the clock and the fireplace. In less than 10 minutes, Arthur would arrive home with his children and... "Everything will be fine," she said soothingly, giving his shoulder a squeeze. "Harry will love you." Sirius forced a smile onto his face, but as soon as her back was turned, he grimaced. His stomach was twisting itself in knots. He hadn't been able to eat much at breakfast. Today was the day that he finally got to meet his godson, for the first time in over a decade. Merlin, where had the time gone? At least he wasn't the only nervous one. Little Ginny's face was white, and she was nervously twirling a licorice wand in her hands, occasionally nibbling on it. Sirius knew that she had corresponded with Harry through Ron, but it didn't stop her from being both elated and terrified of his visit. Poor thing was petrified that she was going to make a fool of herself. "You all right, Pippi?" She mumbled incoherently. "Remember," he said teasingly. "At least you're not an ex-convict. That's already a point in your favour." That caused a smile to blossom on her face, but she still said, "Harry'll like you. You're really cool. You probably won't like me."
"Now, what's given you that idea, Pippi?" he said, deciding to take a seat. "There's only a year's difference between you, after all."
"But I'm a girl," she said morosely. "Fred and George said he won't have time for me." "But I'm a girl," she said morosely. "Fred and George say he won't have time for me."
"The same Fred and George who are notorious pranksters?" he asked, amused, and she blushed. "From what I've heard," he continued, "he's got a girl as one of his best friends. So he isn't the kind of boy who thinks girls are icky. Come on, both of you love Quidditch. You can go flying together."
"The boys don't let me fly," she stated with a scowl. He had heard of this before. "I'm too little. I'm just a girl. Mum wouldn't want it."
Well, I'll tell them they've got to let you have a go," Sirius declared. "So, what position would you play?"
"Chase Professor, she said excitedly, before saying more shyly, Harry is a seeker.
Sounds like we've got the makings of a great team. He chuckled. The twins as beaters, Harry as a seeker, you as a chaser. Could Ron be a keeper or another chaser?
She considered it carefully. Maybe a keeper, she finally said. He's big. He can block the goals.
Excellent, Sirius said. Now all we need is 2 chasers.
Whoosh! Ah! Bloody soot! A lanky redhead cursed as he stumbled from the green flames that had just sprung up. Run! Ginny squealed, jumping too heavy and throwing herself at him. What? Ginny! He exclaimed, almost stumbling back into the flames. Watch it! They're coming through! Sorry, she said hastily as he lifted her away from the hearth as the flames roared again. Ow! A black, messy-haired boy said, ruefully, as he stumbled forward, almost tripping out of the flames. Sirius made forward, as though in a dream, catching the 11-year-old boy before he could fall onto the hard ground. Bright green eyes met his, and widened in surprise, and, for a moment, there was silence. But a roar behind them caused Sirius to imitate the youngest Weasley boy, and lifted Harry out of the way as more redheads tumbled from the fireplace. Sirius began, no idea what he was going to say. Green eyes again found his own, and they were so full of emotion that Sirius's breath caught in his throat. The next moment, the green eyes were gone as a smaller form buried itself against him in a hug. And it occurred to Sirius that perhaps this meeting wouldn't be as bad as he had been dreading. So, Sirius said with a smile that still felt strange. They were settled in Sirius's room, lounging in some old chairs. Tell me about yourself. Where do you want me to start? Harry said, who was sitting with a kind of nervous energy, and yet did not actually seem afraid of Sirius himself. This amazed the former convict. He had been sure Harry would be a lot shyer of him. Hell, he certainly would have been if the roles were reversed. The beginning, I guess, Sirius said casually. What's your family like? They're all right, Harry said with a shrug. They don't like magic. They don't? Sirius said with a frown. Did you ever meet them? Harry questioned. He honestly had no idea if his dad had ever met the Dursleys. No, Sirius said, shaking his head. But James did on a few occasions. He once went with Lily to meet your aunt and uncle at a restaurant. They, didn't hit it off. James and your uncle. I can imagine, Harry said with a laugh. Did Uncle Vernon ask him about his job and car? As a matter of fact, Sirius said in disbelief, he did ask about those things. Your dad started telling him about his racing broom. That would not have impressed Uncle Vernon, Harry said knowledgeably. I have to keep all my school things in my room, so that he can't see them. I don't mind. I'd rather keep them all safe there. Sirius nodded. That made sense. What about your cousin? He questioned. Or cousins? Do you get along with them? I've just got one, Harry corrected. Dudley. And, funnily enough, we've been getting on better since I found out I'm a wizard. Really? Sirius said in surprise. Yeah. I've been showing him wizard sweets. He loves food, Harry said earnestly, pausing as the ghoul wailed and rattled overhead. And he's kind of been showing interest in general. He persuaded my uncle to let Professor McGonagall remove his pig's tail. Wait, what? Sirius burst out. Let's back it up a bit here. Pig's tail? Harry grinned and told his godfather about how his uncle and cousin ended up with pig's tails courtesy of Hagrid. Sirius was very amused by the story, and chuckled throughout, feeling much lighter. He was glad that his godson was getting on better with his cousin, even if his relationship with his aunt and uncle wasn't great. But at least Harry hadn't been put under pressure to go through to a certain house like he had. Although, of course, if James had lived, he would have brought up Harry on red and gold. I was thinking of getting Dudley some more sweets for Christmas, Harry now said. Aunt Bettina and Uncle Vernon just wanted some ordinary muggle things. I'm sure we can all go to Diagon Alley for a day out, Sirius suggested. And if you want, we could also have a day out in the Muggle world. Perhaps meet up with your friend. Hermione? Harry said with a smile. That would be really good. Did you ever visit the Muggle world? Oh, yeah, Sirius said with a grin.
Your mum introduced us to a lot of things. But I would have gone out and explored it anyway, just to annoy my family."
At Harry's curious look, he said,
"They're a more extreme version of your aunt and uncle. They hated all things Muggle. I never agreed with it, so once I was of age, I went out as much as I could."
"What's your favourite Muggle thing?" Harry questioned.
"Probably my bike," his godfather answered. "My motorbike, but since I did add a lot of enchantments to it, I'll have to go with the cinema. I would never have imagined Muggles would come up with such great films without the use of magic. But they did. I remember Jaws, Alien, Halloween, Star Wars."
He paused and then said wistfully,
"Did they do a third Star Wars film?"
"Yeah, I think so," Harry said with a nod. He vaguely remembered Dudley watching them.
"I'll have to see that,"
Sirius muttered to himself. Harry secretly smiled to himself. Sirius was just like his old self. And surely things could only get better.
"Good to have a moment of peace and quiet,"
Pomona Sprout declared, gulping down her strong, heavily sugared tea.
2 rests. 2 weeks rest from the rapscallions we call students. Indeed,"
Snape said, leaning back in his chair with coffee in hand. "It's been an interesting term," Flitwick piped up, almost swamped by the newspaper he was reading. "Still hard to believe about Quirinus. Is he still in St. Mungo's?"
"He is," McGonagall confirmed. "I believe Albus is planning to visit soon."
"Such a waste," her colleague murmured. "He was such a bright, hard-working young man, too." Everyone murmured in agreement except for Snape, who calmly took a sip of coffee. There was a moment of silence until the Transfiguration Professor broke it.
"I wonder how Harry will get along with Sirius,"
McGonagall mused as the Potions Master made a noise of derision. She ignored him and continued,
"I don't believe they'd directly communicated. It was thought best that they meet face to face first. I'm sure they'll get along swimmingly,"
the Herbology teacher stated as Snape muttered, "I'm sure." "Still hard to believe that Peter Pettigrew's been hiding here for what, 10 years? Professor Kettleburn now said. "Makes you want to look twice at everyone's pets." They all nodded. If such an innocent-looking rat could in reality be a cold-blooded murderer.
"I thought I might have a heart attack when he appeared," McGonagall admitted. "It was lucky the children were able to slow him down and catch him."
"Very true," Flitwick said, as his younger colleague did look very thoughtful.
"That rat," Snape said slowly. "He'd been enlarged when we caught him."
"Yes, that's right," his charms professor agreed. "And they've levitated him. Amazing. I'd only just taught them that charm.
"They have shown a lot of talent," McGonagall said slowly. "They seem to master the spells very quickly." "Too quickly," Snape suddenly declared. "That's not normal." "It's unusual," she corrected. "Their essays show they study the course material and actually think about what they are going to say. Combined with some natural talent and concentration, of course they're doing well." "They're too advanced," Snape insisted. "They shouldn't be able to do those kind of spells, especially considering 2 of them are Muggle-raised. And need we forget how they just happened to expose Quirrell?" "What are you suggesting?" his older colleague demanded with narrowed eyes. "They're not what they seem to be," he said darkly. "Like what?" she exclaimed, throwing up her hands. "Death Eaters in disguise?" "I don't know," he said coldly. "But there is something strange about them, and I will figure out what it is."
"What does Albus think?" Flitwick interrupted.
"He thinks they are not a danger," Snape muttered grudgingly.
"Well, thanks to them, you know who was exposed, and so was Pettigrew." "Well, thanks to them, you know who was exposed, and so was Pettigrew," someone pointed out, making Snape scowl. "If that's all they're going to do, I don't mind." "We will see," the Potions Master said coolly, as he raised his cup to his lips. He knew there was something wrong with that trio, and he would find out what. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this one. I like that Harry and Sirius are just talking about these kind of things. It's lovely. And Snape. What can you do? Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and albino pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.